All right, and welcome back to episode 52 of The Bench, powered by Wowhead. We are on episode 52, but we have created more than one episode a week for the last year, as the first episode last year came out on July 30th. So, bonus episodes galore, Growl. How have you been doing the last 52 episodes? What have you been thinking so far?
Man, what a banger podcast. If anyone's been listening for the whole time, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's like such a cool pleasure. I know we kind of piggybacked off of like Titan Forge splitting up, all the Tettles fans and those people probably coming by, but it was really cool just to like boot up a podcast and already have a bunch of people that want to listen to us yap. So yeah, big shout out to everybody. Thank you so much. I'm doing good.
I think it's nice to actually just like get together once a week and just talk about WoW. I think that's the nice part of the entire situation.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when there's stuff going on, like when we got a new patch coming up in PTR. There's definitely some weeks where it's like, But I mean, the nice thing is I feel like we have the ability to just yap about anything. So even those weeks, like there were weeks where I wasn't even playing the game. I was playing hardcore and like nothing was going on, but we still found stuff to talk about. Usually there's nice little something going on in the community no matter what.
Dude, I think this week it might be one of the ones where we're kind of struggling. I listened to the episode last week that you guys made, and you guys talked about the raid for like 50 fucking minutes.
Yeah, that was
that is insane.
It was interesting. I mean, I think we're just so fiending for new content, right? Like that's just the current WoW engine in 2025 is just devour, like can't wait. Yeah. I was watching a stream of some people playing on PTR, and it's like there's like people fighting and like being toxic and like yelling at each other and leaving. And the guy who was streaming was like, dude, why are you even on PTR? Like, what is even the point of this? But like, isn't the only point to like test stuff and like mess around? Like, why are people getting angry about not timing a key? But like, I genuinely think these are just the normal people that don't care at all about testing or learning or anything. And they're just so fiending to do different dungeons that they're just booting up PTR and playing and they don't even know why.
Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna say booting up PTR. If I wasn't a content creator, I don't know if I would ever play the PTR. It's just like I think it kind of takes away some of the fun out of it a little bit. You know, grinding the PTR style keys just because of how you can play the PTR. And it does help because you come into the season more prepared as to what's going on. You have a better grasp on like the class metas and stuff like that. But at the same time, I think that playing the content completely absent of information, that's fun in a completely different way.
Oh yeah, it's so much more fun to, well, because part of the fun part about an MMO, right, is gearing up your guy and like meeting new people and doing all this stuff, right? And so if you inject new dungeons and new changes in with that, it's like super mega dopamine. You're just like having so much fun wanting to log into the game 24/7. At the same time, I don't know about a content creator, but at least a serious player, it does feel like Mythic Plus has gotten so competitive and so hard that like, at least people in my social network are like on the PTR doing stuff, and like you're sort of almost not expected to know, right? Like it's not like people are gonna flame me or whatever or be angry at me for not knowing the strats, but like you definitely, if you're trying to jump into high level content right away on the season launch, people are like doing these skips and these routes that you're like, what in the world is going on here? And then you're like sort of kind of expected to know them.
Yeah, and I think that I will say the reason that the PTR sucks and is kind of unfun to play is because there's like no stakes, right? You're not actually, I think the thing about WoW that's like really fun is like, progressing your character in some capacity, except this isn't your character. This is some fake character that you're not progressing. You're just, it's like, if you only ever played for no IO, right? It's like, oh no, there's no progging. It's only the practice part.
Well, the funny thing, too, is even if there's no stakes for you, I'm sure you feel a similar way. It's even fun if it's score for other people in your group, right? Or like if other people care about the dungeon. Like even if I'm in there with a Rizzo key or like whatever key and I'm just like playing for fun, like knowing that there's people in the dungeon that, really want to complete it and do it in time. And like, if anything, I almost care more like, oh no, my bud really needs this key, like time to lock in. Whereas if I need the key, like, I don't know, whatever, like, I'll get it eventually. I play way too much anyway.
I'm so content creator brained, I literally just like log into the PTR to like see a bunch of other specs and see how they're doing so I can make a tier list because tier lists are good content. Or I need to see the dungeons and so I can get like footage for like teaching people how to play the dungeons on season launch and kind of give people advice as to like what the hard parts of the dungeon are going to be. But it's like never for actual enjoyment. It's just so I can like figure out ahead of time what I need to be able to tell people whenever they are starting out their journey on the season to try to make it as seamless as possible. Because I don't think this is particularly healthy, but players have this expectation that you're already going to like need to know every single mechanic in every single dungeon. And I wish people would just like take it a little bit less serious, but since people take it so seriously, as a result, as a content creator, I just make content to help people take it more serious, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's just sort of the nature of WoW players, right? Like, I remember thinking about comparing Final Fantasy raid to WoW raid, and it's like, while I'm sure there is like some hype or excitement around like the world first in Final Fantasy and some level of prestige, for the most part, like, at least from what I understand, it's just like groups of friends that do the raids, and it's like, whatever your own pace is. And there's not really this hierarchy of guilds that everyone seems to care about and move up in. I mean, I could be wrong, like maybe there is that scene, but that was kind of the vibe that I got, is like, people do blind prog raids in that game.
Mm-hmm.
People do play with no add-ons, or like don't necessarily try and min-max everything. But that's not WoW, right? In WoW, it's like, if there's 1% of something to gain, everyone is just fiending for it. They need it. And it's like, yeah. I mean, to be fair, like, I'm a little bit the same way, right? Like, I was just saying that I enjoy being prepared so that when I'm in with a group of good people, like, I know what to do as well. But I do wonder how, I do feel like if I could like erase my whole brain and start again and then be a WoW player, but like just only play things like blind and way more casually, like now that it's my job, it's way too far gone. But I feel like WoW would be, I'd probably have so much fun in WoW if I was experimenting. Like, all right, so like a kind of random funny side thing, but I was thinking about like how we always talk about classes are too complicated or whatever, and like
sure,
people were talking about mop class design, and I was kind of like looking. I'm gonna raid with some buds and mop, and so I was kind of like comparing mage and mop to retail, and I was thinking about okay, mage is a little bit too complicated. How would I make mage more simple, where it's still some depth and it's still interesting? And I kind of came down to like, oh, like this proc is a little bit like pretty hard to play around, or like blah blah blah, right? And then it kind of hit me. I'm like, wait, I can just open up my talent page and take that proc away, and I could have put this 1 point into literally anything else, and I would have lost like 1% damage. But now I don't have, like, I could have done this myself. Like, I don't need,
your mind
right?
controlling yourself,
right? Like, I don't need to play around this proc. Like, I could have taken this 1 point, put it into anything else. It's not gameplay breaking at all, but I'm not doing that. Like, that's a damage loss. I need it. And it's kind of like, I don't know, it made me think about the whole classes being too complicated thing of like, it could just be so self-inflicted. Like, how often is there a chance where you can remove complexity of your class, and then at the same time you just choose not to?
I think a lot of stuff related to raid is pretty heavily self-inflicted, particularly what you're talking about with like the non-blind prog raiding and whatnot. Like that, like a lot of that is very much self-inflicted. That's the way that players want to play the game, is like having perfect information. Same with like how you're utilizing stops and Mythic Plus. The reason that add-ons are so powerful is because people want them to be powerful, right?
Right.
For the damage variance thing, I don't know. WoW does have pretty high damage variance because I think, in my opinion, the combat of the game, while very expressive, and I think that that's one of the reasons that I really like the combat of WoW, is that it is very expressive. At the same time, there are some people who are just really bad, and so you need all the help you can get, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, also like just doing more damage or more healing or being more tanky is just fun, right? Like, you get that dopamine of like very easy handouts as you like get gear and you get your 4-piece, and like you're gaining damage even though you're not getting better, and then you kind of want more and more and more, and then eventually it's like, well, I guess I have to grind out this delve belt and do these visions and learn how to play around this proc just to get a little more damage because my dopamine requests it.
I mean, I unfortunately play every video game the same way I play WoW now. I don't think it's a WoW thing exclusively anymore. I think it's like a gaming thing where everybody wants to be meta. I don't think that it's very rare that I see people being like being like satisfied playing like something bad. It's kind of like whenever you're playing Elden Ring, for example, even though it's a single player game, you still care about like your build not sucking, right?
Yeah, I think I think first playthrough of a single player game mainly, but I do think that single player games do have a little bit of like exclusion of that, because you kind of can just do whatever you want.
And I think that they should. I think that single player games should have that kind of, you described it as exclusion. I think that's a good way of describing it. But I think that most people who are playing games in 2025 They don't act like that, right?
Yeah. Maybe again, maybe this is just self-inflicted. Maybe this is just our network of people that we watch and we talk to, and we're just weirdos.
Yeah, all good. All right. In good news, we got the date of the patch actually launching. So we have the patch being released on August 5th, and then the Manaforge Omega Raid and Mythic Plus are coming out a week later on August 12th. Now, they did change up some of the stuff that's actually releasing with the patch launch. Now M0s are available on patch launch. What else is available? Delves, right?
Yeah, Delves always have been. I don't know exactly where all the gear lines up, right? Because they've changed it a few times over the course of the expansion.
I think this is champion track. I think M0s are champion track gear.
Like, I think if I had to guess, I would say doing Delves, if you have the maps or whatever, is probably still worth it, but otherwise is not.
Okay.
And then doing M0s is probably worth it. And then otherwise, like, yeah, there's not too much. M0's on a weekly lockout again, so it's not like you're gonna have to do tons and tons of those. It'll be a good way. Remember, M0 is like, I don't know, it was a little weird. I'm interested to see if they do anything to the tuning of it. I remember it was supposed to be quite difficult, and then it ended up being just not difficult when it came out. So I'm wondering if, you know, again, if it's going to be a face roll or whatever. I guess it could vary greatly depending on your gear as well, right? Like if you're going into M0s with full season 2 Mythic Raid gear 683, which a lot of people are because of the uncapped crest and the turbo boost, like it'll probably be pretty damn easy.
I was watching Potty C, I think it was this week or last week. It was one of the more recent episodes. Talking about,
I think they've only had like one episode in the last 3 weeks, so
talking about the dungeon squish. What have you ended up thinking about the dungeon squish as a whole? Because like I think they were discussing it potentially being a mistake or like kind of being a failure thing where Blizzard ended up having to revert it because getting stuck at 7s or whatever ended up feeling too bad. M0s being this larger portion of the gameplay experience, or keys between 2 and 10 being a larger portion of the gameplay experience, just ended up feeling bad and they ended up walking it back. Do you think it was a mistake?
They definitely messed it up in season 1. I think the difficulty jumps were big, especially, I mean, the big one is like, okay, let's say you have gear, right? If you're somebody who does weekly 10s every week for an expansion and it's very easy for you, then you go into the next expansion and you can't do weekly 10s anymore and you have to like progress, especially if you're solo and you're like progressing in pugs with other people. That can be like a really, really frustrating experience. So I think it was like half the difficulty was definitely messed up, but it was also like a really bad emotional experience for people, like imagine if they try and do that again, right? Like think about how easy 10s are again now that they've done 14 turbo boosts, delve belt, corruption, like 10s, you just walk over those, right? Like no, there's very few people that are in keys that are 2 to 9 just because like, you farm 7s to get gilded crests and then eventually you can do 10s and you do 10s. Like
yeah,
even like pretty, I'm seeing lots of people who have like been, oh, I've never pushed Mythic Plus before and now here I am, I have my 3K mount or whatever. Like pretty much everybody is done with that key range right now, and it's like having to ever go back there is going to feel bad. I don't know. I think they could have done a little bit better with the difficulty, and I think that the feeling of the key squish was bad. I wish that key jumps were more granular. Is that the right word? Like it's smaller jump from key to key,
like gradual?
Because I think moving up in a key, gradual maybe is a better word. And that, because I think moving up in a key level is really fun and challenging. And actually right now the high-end keys are like really weird, right? Like basically I talked about this a little bit a couple of pods ago, but basically like you can pug all the way up to like 18s and sometimes 19s like pretty comfortably.
Was that the 20s or the goal?
Yeah, everybody times 20s. Yeah. What I'm getting flamed in the comments by saying everybody's goal is to have all 20s. That's not what I meant. But basically, it's weird now. We're like, only the very elite teams are doing keys above 20. And then like tons of people are at 19s. Like so my mage is Resil 19 and I have 2 20s timed and it's exactly 3,800. Title cutoff is going to be 3,800. Like you're literally going to need all-time 19s and some 20s to get title this season. And the elite teams are only doing 21s. Like the difference between title and like, Ellismere and Yoda's team or whatever is so small because the key jumps are so big. Like going from a 20 to a 21 priory is like absolutely insane. And I kind of think that you lose a little bit of the fun progression out of it. Like, I don't really mind if keys go up to 35 or whatever, right? Like, because I think it's fun to move up levels. It's fun
Yeah,
to, like, sort of like how it's been. There's this goal of, oh, get Resil 15, now Resil 16, right? The smaller the key jumps are, the more fun that is. But I guess it does have a problem where, like, it spreads everybody out too thin, maybe, and it makes finding groups even harder.
that's the
So
thought process, is that it spreads
yeah.
people out too thin. But I don't know. I think that it's just interesting to think about the problems that it kind of causes, because you end up, if the jumps are too big, especially at the lower key levels, then players aren't able to achieve their rewards. And as we've seen time and time again, players, the reason that you play the game is to continue to gain power for your character. And if you feel like you can't gain any more power for your character because the content is too hard, of course you're going to quit. So I mean, it's kind of an interesting balance act that Blizzard's going to have to figure out where the correct line is for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to run season 1 back again with the changes that they made, right? So not this big jump at 12, not the, like, allowing Gilded Crest a little bit earlier, right?
The Challenger's
Like, I
Peril
wonder
is
if
gone.
yeah, because honestly, that key jump at 12, there was a lot of people that started War Within, were having fun, and then they get to 12s, and, like, you actually couldn't pug 12s. Like, obviously, eventually, once the myth track gear started rolling in and the crest cap moved up, people could more easily. But 12s on the first couple weeks were really hard.
That was so
and
hard.
and if you were a good player, like, 11s were not, right? And so you would see these people who have every single 11 two-chested, and then they just can't do a 12, and they're just like, well, what am I supposed to do? Because it jumped up like 30% health and damage and added the Challenger's Peril or whatever. And it's just like, jeez.
No, Challenger's Peril was on the 7 level last.
Or whatever it's called, the Guile or
The
whatever.
Guile, yeah,
the one
yeah.
that removes the affix that buffs you. Those buffs are really strong, by the way. I mean, that stuff owns. I mean, I know there's not a lot of people interacting with those key levels nowadays, but I do think they really hit it out of the park with those affixes. But at the same time, I don't mind not having them.
I think the affix rework is a major success from my opinion. I really like the affix rework, how the Guile interacts with high keys. Every single time I interact with, like, sub 12s and you end up getting the affixes, first off, I get surprised that I have to,
yeah, every time it's plunged, you're like, what is this?
Yeah, but every single time I play them, I actually enjoy the way that it makes my character feel. You feel so damn powerful every single time you end up getting the buffs. And so I think that the affix rework was largely a success.
Yep, I'm a big fan. I think Mythic Plus, and going into some of the changes on the PTR and the things that they're doing, while not all of the changes are home runs, I feel like I'm having trouble picking good words today. I want to use the phrase fan service, like the thing that they did with bubbles, and like it really feels like they're straight up just like, okay, this is what you guys want, here you go, right? And not like begrudgingly, right? Not like, the devs being angry or whatever, but genuinely just like, let's try and just listen to people and make a lot of changes and make people happy with what we're doing.
This is, if you haven't, if you're not on, like, WoW Twitter ever, or you don't like refresh Wowhead daily, first off, you should, because they're the sponsor of this podcast. But Bubbles is basically getting deleted next season. And here's a clip. Basically, Bubbles spawns with Swamp Face, and Swamp Face grabs him, slams him into the ground over and over again, and kills Bubbles, it's ridiculous. But nobody is mad about it. Everybody's like, oh, this is great.
Pretty much everybody universally laughs the first time we get to this dungeon and see this. Another really funny Easter egg that honestly makes you feel a little bit bad is after you fight Swampface and then you go down in the dungeon, you still hear Bubbles. And you're like, what the heck? Why do I still hear Bubbles? And if you look in a pipe in the top by the ceiling, there's a baby Bubbles named, it's like Bubbles Jr. or something. And he's just sitting there all alone looking for his dad or whatever. And it's just like, oh no, what did we do? We didn't even think about if Bubbles had a family. We just wanted Bubbles gone. And now what have we done?
Well, listen, we skipped him. He got to reproduce for a very long time because he was never killed personally.
Yeah, it's so good.
Dude, before we get into our main topic for the day, where we're just rambling on about 11.2 stuff, something that was brought up in stream today was that somebody said that they missed the way that Mythic Raid gearing felt relative to, like, what it currently is. Have you been feeling that lately? Like, I know they can't go back. I know that they can't go back.
How far back? Are we talking like classic stuff?
No,
or
like BFA. Like whenever we were playing in like BFA, I know you didn't play Legion, but like Legion BFA, where the raid gearing felt like it was actually incredibly powerful. The every single time you got an upgrade, it felt more meaningful. Now we kind of have these slots that are more or less locked in, where we have 4 tier slots that are locked in every single season. Now we have Reshii Wraps that are locked in. We got this mole belt. We have Cersei circlet that's locked in. We have 2 slots for embellishments that are locked in every single season, where now you're actually getting less gear than you would in the past. But the discrepancies between, like, let's say Raiders and Mythic Clusters is a lot closer, which I think is an advantage of doing it like this. But at the same time, it's, at least in my opinion, made raid gearing feel a little bit worse.
Right. Well, it's not just the discrepancy as well as the consistency or like deterministic ability to like how many times in those old seasons, especially when they had tier sets like early on, when it was like you didn't have your 4-piece and it's like 15% damage, and then you go into Group Finder and you just see these groups that are like +10 checking 4-piece, and you just like don't even get invited to keys because you don't have your 4-piece. I personally enjoy both sides of the spectrum. Like in Classic, where you know you have to roll on an item against 5 other priests in your raid, and it's the one item that's good for you. But man, when you win it, it feels crazy, even though you don't even need it and you're not even doing anything with it. Right? The feeling of getting that item, being able to sit in town with it and like have it when items are really rare. I just don't think that WoW in its current stage is like that kind of a game. Like I think they've really moved in a direction of making things more deterministic, so that if you're playing the game and doing stuff, you don't feel behind. The one thing I do think is it feels like they try and cling on to that a little bit, though. Like, for example, when they make these really powerful raid trinkets or cantrip rings or weapons, and then they put them at the end of the mythic. Right. So it's like, while 97% of the raid gearing is gone and you can kind of just do whatever and do your vault, there is still like, if you're the kind of guy that really does care about that, you still do, you know, sometimes get in a situation where you don't have an item that you feel like you really need and it's frustrating.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, I don't know. I miss it. I just don't think it I don't think it really has a current place in the game right now, but I do think that there's tons of merits. And, you know, there were plenty of problems with BFA, but boy, when you time a key and then you pull out a Titan Forged Leech Mega Trinket that you need, that's Biss, you're just like, oh, okay. Like, right? Like, I'm not saying that's good for the game as a whole from like a competitive and fair standpoint, but from a like just straight dopamine, like that's unmatched, you know?
I haven't like ran around my house or like yelling, having like dropped like a Biss piece of gear in a really long time. Like the last time I heard somebody noticeably get super hyped for a piece of gear is like they looted the Razageth bow week 1 and they are screaming their heads off, right? Like that's the last time I've heard somebody like they get super hyped over an individual piece of loot. Now, what would Farfa say about this? Care less about loot, probably.
Yeah, you know, I do think
it's better for the game. I think that you and I are in the same spot where we both landed on the same thing. Where it would be worse for the game if they went back to having individual pieces of gear being that impactful again, where you have the insane dopamine whenever you get each individual piece. But at the same time, I do miss it sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really mind at all. I think either way is good for me, especially because I don't think, you know, like certain classes had important things. I guess as a healer, what is really what I mean, you never really needed it. Like if you play a tank or a healer, yeah, it feels bad when you don't have this stuff, but it doesn't stop your ability to find groups and play and do high level content in the same way that it might sort of if you're like, you know, a mage that doesn't have your font of power, which is like this crazy trinket in BFA or, you know.
So the issue is that you feel like the game is unplayable unless you have those things. Whereas opposed in the past, like, how does it? I'm sure you can speak on it to it in Classic, but like, does it feel like the game is still playable even without those pieces? But it's more fun whenever you get those really special items.
Well, so the big thing about Classic, right, is the utility of the items, like what you're doing with them. I mean, I guess if you care about parses, it is there, but for the most part, like, right. So for the most part, like, you clear all the content in dungeon gear, right? Like, you hit level 60, you farm out dungeons, you get dungeon gear, and then you can basically clear out Molten Core and Ixia and all that stuff, right? So the main value of this item is just, for lack of a better word, swag. Like, I got this ring. Like, Yeah, it's
Okay,
a
what about the pre-raid
huge.
miss? What about the pre-raid miss then that you actually farm out?
I think pre-raid miss is it's sort of like current retail where like if you really want every single bis statted piece in every slot, it will take a while, and it does feel good when you get like the more rare ones, the harder to get ones, but you don't necessarily even need those too. Like I think it's just all about the fun of the items and the prestige of having the items rather than what do the items do. Like you don't really feel like, oh, I'm super trolling, like I have these bad items, just because all the content is so easy, right? And obviously, like, you can do challenge stuff and whatever, but yeah, I think that's the big thing is like, in retail, there's always bigger fish. There's always a scarier area to be where you feel like you need that gear. Whereas classic, it's like, you don't really, there's nowhere to go, right? Like you're the big fish in the small pond, and you just keep getting bigger with every piece of loot you get.
Yeah, not necessarily a problem, but more.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I know there's a lot of
It's just a
classic
different
candies that
game,
really
right?
care about parsing. Like, there are a lot of people that care about parsing who are probably like shaking their head right now, like, "Oh, what is he talking about?" Like this other warrior in my like. There was a moment in our guild when we raided in hardcore where a really rare item from Nax, which is the last a weapon for a warrior dropped in Nax. But our best warrior in the guild had just gotten another good weapon. So it's like, do we give him like a small upgrade, or do we give some other guy who has some dog shit weapon like a really big upgrade, like the second line warrior? Right? So we end up not giving the weapon to the main warrior because he already has a really good weapon and it's not as good for the raid.
Usual.
Right? So this is hardcore WoW. So that guy proceeds to leave the raid after the loot is decided, fly to Winter Spring and climb up the highest mountain and threaten to jump off the mountain and suicide his character. Like they're like the classic players in their loot, they take things real seriously. So again, but it's just a little bit different, right? Like it's not like he's already in a good guild. It's not like he can't play the game because he doesn't have the weapon. But there's still that feeling of prestige and excitement when you get it. That it's a different, no utility, but a lot more cool, I guess.
What do you think, Squishy?
Wait, Squishy's not here.
Oh wait. Ah shit. I guess we gotta keep
froze?
going.
I'll just type a message in chat. Maybe he'll come back.
Yeah, maybe we'll show back up. How long's he not been here for?
We did the intro, right? I heard him.
Yeah.
Right?
Anyway, okay. Something that I know has been playing the PTR a little bit. You guys covered it a little bit last week. Holy shit. Our classes, particularly tier sets, very, very imbalanced right now.
Yeah, there are some classes that are absolutely blasting.
We are 1 month away from the patch coming out, and there are a lot of egregiously OP specializations. Right off the top of my head, Brewmaster Monk does infinity damage. Protection Warrior does infinity healing. This goddamn Moonkin specialization does Jesus prio damage. Arcane Mage is broken again somehow. Beast Mastery and Marksmanship Hunter are both insane. Enhancement and Ellie Shaman are both insane. Shadow Priest is Jesus again.
Shadow Priest is absolutely insane right now. I was doing this.
Broken. I literally just listed, what was that, like 10 specs that are insane? Havoc Demon Hunter.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention Havoc Demon Hunter, which is also crazy.
This is it's going to be a very interesting game of musical chairs. I hate to be a downer because I think we're just coming off of what was the most balanced season of Mythic Plus that there's ever been in terms of, obviously not everything is perfect, but I just don't expect there's going to be some classes that get the nerf bat, some that don't. I think a lot of it comes down to raid, right? Like some classes will be insanely good in raid and they're going to get tuned, and other classes like Arcane, for example, pretty optimistic about that because it's just very middle of the pack and like not super special on single target, right? But when you get that funnel in M plus and you get that prio damage, so I think Shadow Priest has been really sad lately. Maybe that class stays OP. I think it's just really weird if we have another like Shadow Priest mage, magic damage comp again. But at the same time, like Hunter is crazy, right? Like Hunter is doing so much damage. I don't remember what Warlock spec, but there's some Warlock spec that was doing crazy amounts of damage in keys I was in.
Is Warlock crazy right now too?
Oh, I don't remember. Oh, Honestly, every time I play with a Warlock, they do more damage than me, and they just have some random new thing on their details that I've never heard before. I was playing with, I don't remember who it was, but he just has like Soul Swipe as his like 40% of his damage. Yeah, what is that? You don't even know, right? That was literally what what it was called. And he was like, oh, this is just this hero talent thing with my tier set. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess that just does 40% of your damage, a spell that I've literally never heard of before.
Yeah, my bad. Sorry, bro. But yeah, like the point isn't like, oh yeah, these individual specs need tuning. It's more like there's so many of them that we can just think of off the top of our head that are just insanely broken that they have a lot of tuning ahead of them, I would say.
Yeah, it brings up another difficult part too. We've always complained about classes doing too much damage and having not enough health, and I feel like
Oh
the
yeah.
damage gains versus the health gains are going to be so crazy this season. So I think that we're going to get into, especially if we don't end up playing with Dispriest again, we're going to end up with super one-shot territory very quickly again.
Greg requested a topic on the podcast this week. He said, can you please bring up that Blizzard needs to increase the HP of every single mob in Mythic Plus or lower all of their damage? I don't care which one.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think that for me, the way I see it is if you're doing 10s to 12s, you should be able to more or less pull the dungeon the way that you want to pull it. And as long as you're decent at your characters and you're doing the mechanics and doing the bosses, you should be able to time the key. And then when you move beyond 12s, I think a lot of the challenge for the most part should be, can you figure out good routes and do good damage and complete the dungeon quickly?
Sure.
And I think that some bosses being challenging to live and like, okay, this is a really tough boss. We have bloodlust, like hunker down. We need to help our healer. I think that's fine. But for how many packs are just doing insane amounts of group damage and just the health bars are just absolutely insane looking at them. Luckily, I've been playing mage mostly in PTR, so I don't look at the health bars. But whenever I do, I get worried.
What's the best healer right now? Is it Disc again?
I think my personal opinion is I think Druid is the strongest healer even after the nerfs. Druid doesn't provide a lot of damage reduction per se, and also Boomkin is very good, so that's kind of a weird spot. But from what I've seen and played with, also keep in mind we're in a weird situation where we're back to Arakara, and the poisons in Arakara are like they've gotten worse. You might have thought they would have made them better, but the poisons in the first area are so deadly right now that yeah, I think Druid is good. I think Priest is all. I mean, it's hard because like all the healers, sort of like the DPS, are just giga powerful, right? Like you're not going into dungeons not being able to heal stuff. A lot of it will come down to your utility kit, how you mesh with your team, like what sorts of cooldowns you bring, what raid buffs you bring. But yeah, I think if I had to guess, I would say right now Druid. I think Shaman is also decent. I think it's like similar. I would say it's similar right now, but Priest is less good and Druid is more good.
Okay. Dude, I got shit on for the Sacred Flame earlier.
Oh boy.
I immediately got thunderclapped in a pot shot and just died, and I like hover over my death and I'm go, oh wait, where the fuck is my shield bot? Like, dude, no.
Dude, having a giant shield for your entire health bar is very nice. However, I believe there are certain things. I don't know exactly what all the different things are. I know there's one really powerful healer trinket that's like basically an AoE raid CD that just puts like an enormous shield on everybody.
Isn't there one that does infinite damage too?
Yeah, there's a lot of really, really powerful trinkets. I was seeing it's hard because healers just do beans damage right now. So like I was seeing details where a trinket is doing like 10% of somebody's damage, but like I mean 10%, you know, like okay, well who cares? Because DPS are just scaling so crazily big as well. So
yeah.
I don't know how much healer damage is gonna really matter here.
Yeah. So change wise to the dungeons, Blizzard has made I would describe pretty good changes across the board to all of the returning dungeons that we've seen this week, at least in Mythic Plus. Something that's actually kind of interesting, if you saw this earlier when we were looking at Jack's VOD in this Arakara, these hulking blood guard mobs that used to do that slam ability, now instead they do their damage over like a 5-second channel, and now their damage is OP. I'm going to be honest. They do way too much damage. But the way that they do damage is a lot more reasonable, and the fact that they're trying to get mobs away from the one-shot territory and more into the damage over time sphere, I think that proves to be pretty promising. They've also nerfed the Impale from the Knights. They nerfed a couple of the mobs in Priority of the Sacred Flame. Did they nerf anything in Bloodgate aside from bubbles getting deleted from the game?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have some thoughts about the dungeons if you just want to go down the list.
Yeah, let's just go down the list.
They're okay. Well, we can talk about Arakara.
Okay.
We'll talk about Arakara since we were just there. So I do like. So they made a few changes to Arakara. For one, they changed all of the big hulking guys, right? Like you mentioned, instead of being a slam, it's now a damage over time thing on the group, which is nice. It's definitely more damage overall, but at the same time, like, you know, it's spread out. It's easier to mitigate and heal through or whatever. The especially nice thing is the Blood Guard at the end, right? That was the guy who did the slam that stunned you.
Now.
Yes. So now he doesn't do that that big slam or whatever. He just does AoE as well. So that's nice. So that guy is pullable if you want to. Another really good change that they made is the drones at the end, the one that put that stacking slow on your tank. Now it's like a little bit different, and it's like a small slow, but it also is a healing absorb. So like you still need to dispel it and stuff, but it's not like it doesn't root your tank after like 4 hits or whatever the old one did. So that area is much more reasonable.
Last boss.
I think
last boss got changed from 5 debuffs to 3.
Yeah, last boss is interesting. It doesn't really feel like it changes that much to me. You know, like you still have to be paying attention to all the lines. You still get owned if you hit the poison. I think most of the changes is for like lower keys where people are a lot less aware and the healer output is a lot less and you can live some of the mechanics. But in higher keys, I think for the most part, like all that stuff is going to one-shot you anyway, so it's not going to be too much of a change. Yeah, so those are like the good changes. One change so a lot of the like damage over time effects in the first area have gotten really, really nasty. So they changed the way the poison works. I don't know exactly how they changed it. Before it was like, it was one of those spells that could only cast one at a time. So you would pull like 8 mobs and it would shoot one poison, little delay, another poison, another, you know,
there's anti-sync on them.
Yeah, the anti-sync that's gone now, and the poison stacks. But they reduce the damage of the poison. But the problem is when you get instantly 4 stacks of the poison, it does way more damage. So the poison dispel in the first area is gonna feel mandatory again. We had a pull where we had a shaman who did poison cleansing totem, then totemic recall, another poison cleansing totem, and we had a druid with poison dispel and a brewmaster, and we died. So it's really, really, really nasty.
We need Aug Evoker back.
Yeah. So also there's the flyer guys, the ones that would like you do the first pull and they like jump on you and peck you and it would slow you. That doesn't slow you anymore, which is nice. But now it's a lot worse of a bleed. And combined with the poisons, you just have more damage over time stuff. I've noticed so many groups on PTR, like, you know, the first pull where you run down the stairs and go to the mini boss. If you try and do that on a 15, like, unless you're very well coordinated, you just die. Like, you just don't make it to the mini boss because you're just taking so much damage from all the random, like, bleeds and poisons and stuff. So the first area has gotten, in my opinion, much more difficult. I feel like there has to be some weird changes with the first boss and the way the hitbox works or the way it pulls in ads or something. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it doesn't feel the same as it did before.
Wait, really?
I think it feels like the ads like
I did it once and we didn't heal the boss. We didn't feed the boss.
Yeah. So I think maybe what happens possibly is the hitbox is better, but the ads don't all like the fixate isn't consistent. Maybe it's just because I'm playing with weird classes that I'm not used to, but like sometimes it feels like the fixate just stops and it just goes on the tank and then it just goes into the boss because the tank doesn't realize he has an ad on him. I can't quite put my finger on what they did, but I'm sure the better tanks will figure it out pretty soon. But it definitely feels different, yeah. So I think it's hit or miss. I think the first area wasn't even that easy. Like the first area of Arakara was pretty challenging before, and the first boss was pretty challenging, and it feels like everything now is just even harder. Also, I swear they increased the count required in this dungeon, because every group that I play with, we get to the end and we don't have enough count. Like we do the whole left side, all this stuff, all the flyers, even the middle sometimes, and we still don't have the count.
I mean, that's because most people were over pulling the first area, and I doubt you're over pulling the first area.
Yeah, that's possible. Like So either way, I think I'm like on the fence about this. Like I think that if they fix the first area and just make it not so crazy, I'm okay with it, because they did make a lot of good changes to the end here.
Yeah. I think overall this is something that you didn't talk about. I like the VFX updates.
Oh yes, I guess I'm just so used to it already.
They basically modernized both Dawnbreaker and Arakara with modern VFX that we got from last patch. Everything looks way better. I'm gonna be honest. All the swirlies on the first boss look, they're easy to see. All the swirlies in any part of this dungeon are much easier to see. So I think that's one of the best things that actually came out of last patch was the VFX updates.
Yep. Yeah, I'm already spoiled now. Where I'm just like I didn't even notice it really.
Yeah. Hard to play without it. Do you want to move to Dawnbreaker? I haven't played Dawnbreaker. That's the only one I haven't done.
So I've done Dawnbreaker. I've done a lot. I've actually played the PTR a fair bit. So the first boss is they've made. So remember the first boss? It puts the puddles on ranged players, and then you kind of have to like bait the puddles out, and then you'd use the beams. Well, they made an interesting change where now the puddles can target melee players. So if you have one or more melee, in your group, the puddle will constantly just spawn on the boss. And so this is so if you watch the VOD right there, it just went on it might have been ranged players in there, but yeah, it just goes on melee constantly. And so one problem with this, and this is something that you might not even realize because people did the boss correctly season 1, was the puddles are actually bigger in the second phase. And the puddles are actually so big in the second phase that it's very, very difficult to drag the boss out of the puddles before it uses beam, to the point where if you have a melee puddle spawn, the boss literally, like, it just doesn't move. Like, it just doesn't move. It casts. It'll, like, beam in the puddles. This boss is, like...
You don't have enough, you don't have enough range. You have to have 2 range to get it to bait onto range, don't you?
I'm just telling you that's how it works. I don't know what this group is, but it does go on melee. Like, even if, well, because in theory it should, like, there were times when it didn't go on me, right? Like, it should go on me every time, and then one of the melee. But yeah, there were times when 2 of them went on melee. Yeah. So the first boss is completely demonic. They made a lot of the trash after the first boss, though, a lot more reasonable. They removed the AoE that happens on the shadow elemental guys or whatever.
It's
so
gone?
That they just... Yes, it's completely gone. So the way this mob used to work is it has like 30% energy, and then I don't remember if it until it runs out, or basically it'll like... It's on a timer where like 30 to 40 seconds after you pull it, it like blows up, and it usually only gets 1 blow up. But it's really tough because there's literally 2 of them sitting at the door of this area that you need to get in. And you even seen teams like go in the back of the church or like fly in before the mob.
This is Spy Master's web pull. This is the Spy Master's pull.
Yeah, this is normally the Omega pull, right? But so also the guys that do the blink strike or whatever, they no longer, like, it no longer does damage. It's just a blink. So what would happen to your tank is they would pull those, remember those tank, the guys that hurt the tank really bad in this area?
I don't remember. Shadow Walker, I think, was
Shadow, something like that, yeah. They would basically blink strike your tank and then immediately melee them, so they'd get hit with a huge magic hit and physical hit immediately. Now it's only now it's only the regular melees.
If they're listening and they can fix anything in this dungeon, if somehow you can fix, I don't know if this is fixed or not, those Shadow Walkers, they would actually just like target random players with their ability, even if the tank is like the person who was pulling the mobs. And so like that was nonsense in season 1. If that's gone, well, so, I'm like, thank God.
Yeah, that's slightly improved. I think like it might still jump on you, but that jump doesn't just do insane damage and one-shot you. Most of all this stuff in the ground level, I think, is made better. One thing you'll notice here, the animation for the orb is a lot better now. Yeah, you see that. Before, the animation for the orb was really, really buggy. Now it actually looks good, where it spawns a small circle and then it slowly grows, so you can very clearly see where it is and where it's going to happen before it actually spawns. The orb definitely got a lot better. It feels like the debuffs weren't doing as much, but maybe that's just because of the key levels we were doing and stuff.
Sure.
But overall, I felt like most of the dungeon was easier to heal until I got to the second boss. And the second boss was doing a lot of damage. Like everything felt pretty easy, like normal to heal. And then I got to the second boss and it was like, oh, this is feeling like a high key. This video right here is only a 12 and I'm on mage, so I'm not looking at my health. But like healers were, I think we might have even died in this 12. Like I'm pretty sure like we had just a civilian Mistweaver, like just some guy from PTR or whatever. And I'm pretty sure we might have died to one of the AoEs on this 12. Like this guy was doing a lot of damage.
I mean, in season 1, this guy was demonic too. We were very heavily carried by Augvoker, DK, Disc Priest with perfectly timed Voidweaver disc ramps. Like, I don't even know if this was necessarily, like realistically healable by most other healers, but it was in season 1 by Disc Priest, particularly whenever you were also utilizing all of your Augvoker and group defensive utility. So it's kind of tough to say as to like what is actually the cause of this, especially too since you kind of called him like a civilian Mistweaver monk. You never really know like what skill difference you're going to get with people, on top of the fact that a lot of the times people are like trying out new specs for the first time on the PTR, so it's like kind of hard to tell sometimes, because healing and tanking, it doesn't get any easier on the PTR. As a DPS, you can play some. You can play some.
I love playing DPS on the PTR compared to healer.
dude, DPS, you can play some dog shit spec. You can payphone during the key. You can take the key off if you want to. As a tanker healer, there's no keys that are taken off. If you play like shit, your group is like, wow, does Resto Shaman suck ass? Like, what's going on with this key?
Dude, random funnies, a side story from a Dawnbreaker I did today, but we were pugging, and actually the group was Porcy, who's like the brewmaster, like in the Omega Euro group or whatever.
Yeah.
DJ Frush, the Ellie Shaman, I was playing. I don't remember who our other DPS was, but it was somebody good. And then we just had a healer from LFG or whatever, and we do the first pull, and he starts complaining that we're not kicking the bolts. The healer does. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess a bolt went off or whatever, but it's like, dude, it's a PTR plug in comms, like, or not in comms. We're not going to kick every single bolt, right? Like, we're trying our best here. And then we end up wiping to the first pack, and we're like, all right, let's just do a lower key or whatever. Dawnbreaker, this dungeon, the very first pack. He basically says like we weren't kicking, so we wiped to the very first pack of Dawnbreaker. So then we go into the first boss. And the DJ Frush gets the first debuff, the one that you have to like dispel and does the healing absorb.
Yeah.
It just doesn't get dispelled. And he just bleeds out, and then he ends up dwarfing it at like 1 HP, right? Then the next one goes on the healer. The healer doesn't dispel it, he just dies. Like it just ticks on him and he dies. And then he said, the boss is bugged, this damage is crazy or something. And we're like, bro, you don't even know the mechanics. And it's just like no hate on the healer at all. It's just so funny that like a random civilian who didn't even know the dungeon mechanics stepped into a key with like a bunch of like 3.8k IO players and is like telling them what to do. And like, oh, you guys got to kick or whatever. It's like, you got to be careful with what you say to people or what you do on PTR, because but anyway, that was really, really funny.
PTR is the time to learn for sure.
But everyone in the group was very polite about it. We actually like lowered the key again and like tried to go again and help them or whatever. But
yeah, I mean, nobody's like, very few people are like sweating the PTR, and if they are, they're playing in like a 5-stack. So don't worry about that. Okay.
So only last change in Dawnbreaker, a small one, is they added another ritualist patrol, or rather, they basically added a ritualist in the like courtyard area by where the second boss is. So you can kind of do like a big pull there if you want to, and like focused on the ritualist. Before it was like just a bunch of annoying like small casters or whatever. Not a big change, but sometimes Jangdi pulls it with an arcane orb, and then you have a ritualist and with that mini boss pack.
What's the ritualist mob?
It's the mob in the very first pull, the one that does it has a kick, it has a curse, and then it has like the double. Yeah. So there's So there's one of those that's patrolling around where the normal lust pull is, like in the courtyard.
All right, red flag. That's not a legal pull. You're on.
Overall, though, I think the trash changes were good. It kind of feels like, again, they added count in here, but maybe I just don't remember any of the routes, but it's so much more reasonable to pull the trash that I don't even mind adding count in here.
Yeah. Other couple of dungeons. So we got Operation Floodgate, which we talked about earlier. I did that dungeon. I don't think they've changed anything except for Bubbles is now gone. It feels like I'm pretty sure it's the exact same dungeon.
Yep, it's very, very reasonable. I think they nerfed the tank buster on Big Mama.
Okay.
They also increased they basically nerfed Big Mama slightly. They nerfed the Tank Buster, and then they also made it so the phase lasts slightly longer, so you have more time to kill the planes before it phases.
Great change.
But only like 5 seconds. Yeah, for the most part, the whole dungeon is more or less the same. Until you get to Bubbles, and then you see Swamp Face kill Bubbles. And then one interesting thing to note is that Bubbles, why did you show that clip? Tettles just goes to a random moment in a floodgate, and I just get run over by Bront in the first boss. But so when Bubbles spawns, normally Bubbles lands on a pack and kills it, and then it's not there. But now that pack is there, so now there's actually extra mobs.
Yeah,
there's extra mobs that you pull there. So I believe one weird problem is that it's either another kick or another dispel. So it does make that pull slightly more challenging, and you may have to just think about the way that you pull that, or like CC one mob or something. I've been hearing healers have problems with dispels on that area, but for the most part, yeah, that dungeon is more or less, yeah, exactly. The electricians that do that, whatever the 10-second debuff or thingy. But yeah, for the most part, dungeon is, and to be honest, I like this dungeon. There were definitely some challenging parts in it, but I think I like it. I think it's good.
I think it's an excellent dungeon, and I think that the fact that they didn't need to change too much is kind of a testament to like just it being generically a pretty good dungeon. Like it felt pretty fair for most points of the dungeon. Sans Bubbles, who was a demon, but now he's gone, so no complaints.
Yeah, and even Bubbles, to be honest, like while Bubbles was a demon, it wasn't that crazy of a mob. It was mainly just that you could never pull it with anything, and it didn't really give you that much count.
The count was
exactly
the count was so bad, and you had to do it solo. Like there's so many problems.
There are mobs, like for instance, the mob at the end of Dawnbreaker or whatever. Well, that one's, I guess, just shouldn't count because it's mandatory.
It's required.
Either way, there are equally difficult mini bosses, but it just feels like Bubbles was so not worth it to pull, but it's so obnoxious.
So the Priory of the Sacred Flame mini bosses, those are like 50 count per. So like
yes, all the like there are even routes I've seen where you skip one of the mini bosses and kind of like run by it, but you still pull it later. You're just changing the way that you do the order because they're so worth it to pull.
People tried for a little bit not pulling Chainmail, the mob that like leaps and puts the bleed on people. Yep. And then it's just like every single time you start routing to where you skip Chainmail, it like just makes you pull like 2 more packs of trash, and you're like, what the fuck is this? It's like a complete another pull, so it ends up being valuable, which I think is kind of, I don't think it's the best way of doing it, but I think it's a way that makes a lot of sense, given that like if the mobs don't have, or they don't give enough count, if mini bosses don't give enough count, if there's a possible way of skipping them, if it's not forced, like Growl said earlier, we will skip them. I promise you, we will skip them. We will find a way.
Yep. So that's pretty much it. Honestly, so Priory, yeah, you may struggle finding footage of me in Priory because we don't get very far. I don't know if we've even made it to the second boss yet.
Oh.
I think maybe we've completed one of them. Priory is very hard. They've nerfed the knights, which I think is a good change for like lower level groups, because if you're just holding W, chances are you're going to run into a knight and they're not going to be so rough. However, the knights are still insanely difficult and very tough to pair with any of the mini bosses. So I still think the knights for a higher level group are off limits unless they nerf them more.
I think the knights are doable. Having played, I played one today. I didn't think it was like undoable. I was talking to Sense about going right, and he said that right side. So basically, they made a lot of changes to this dungeon to try to encourage you to go right. They ended up buffing the left side mini boss. They buffed some of the stuff on the left side, and they're trying to encourage you to go to the right, especially by like nerfing the knight and whatnot. But I was talking to Sense about this, and he said basically the casters only give 6 count, but they have much less HP, and you can effectively make them do 0 DPS to you whenever you either utilize CC or you kick them, versus the alternative. I mean, if we go to 3chess.io and kind of look at the mobs on the right side, it's all fucking sharpshooters, right? They're all sharpshooters, they're light spawns, there's a knight, and it's just, if you can make these mobs do 0 damage to you with interrupts and CC versus mobs hitting you with pot shot and taking your entire health bar, with a knight, like, okay, it's gonna be really tough to actually make these pulls reasonable, just given the texture of what the mobs are on the right side. And so it's kind of interesting because people are still going left even after they buffed the left side due to the count discrepancies and due to just what the mobs are on the right side. So I don't know what Blizzard's gonna like. If they really, really, really want us to go to the right side, there are some things that they can maybe start to do. I don't know what they would do though.
Yeah, the right side's really tough for a lot of reasons. Obviously, like you mentioned,
the sharpshooters, I think, are the
packs
problem
are
mobs.
just more difficult. So there's this night patrol that goes along the right side that's much more difficult to avoid than the left side.
Yeah.
Partially because there's so many sharpshooters that jump around, and you need to be. There may be a world where Yoda's team finds a very specific way to navigate through all these packs where the sharpshooters, gather nicely and you can do it. Another problem, though, is the mini boss that you fight, even though he was nerfed, I believe, a little bit, does so much AoE damage. And the problem is, well, all the packs over there have sharpshooters. And so anytime you're pulling pot shot guys with a mini boss that does AoE damage, you run the risk of, just falling over and getting like one shot instantly.
Okay,
so,
yeah. So what Growl is basically saying is Emberlands, the mob that you played on top of Dalecry, the one that does the massive pulsing AoE, it also does the Divine Judgment tank attack thing. That mob, after you kill Damien on the top side, that mob is the mob that you have to fight. And so whenever you would fight Dual Maul, he's just a caster, right? You kick him over and over again. You make sure your tank doesn't get Cinder Blasted, and you make sure you kick the Fireball cast. The alternative is Emberlands, which does this massive pulsing AoE from Holy Radiance. What mob are we pulling this with, right? Like that's
it's both. It's not just Emberland, but it's also the guy on the right, the guy that you have to kill. I don't know what his name is.
This guy,
he has a spell.
He just has a spell called ground effect, doesn't he?
No. Heatwave is like a massive group-wide AoE thing for like 4 seconds. Both of the mini bosses do it.
Okay.
And so you run into a very difficult situation. So like one thing we kind of figured out was like there are some casters to the like north of the boss that you can kind of pull the Emberlin with, but the Heatwave, like there's not enough mobs that you can do 2 reasonable pulls with those 2 mobs. So it just ends up being slower. And then on top of that, they changed the first boss, as you can see on screen now. Instead of throwing the spear, he has this area denial mechanic where it puts this giant circle on the ground that does AoE damage. And so you'll run into times when, if you go right, you have to fight Dual Maul with the boss. Dual Maul has the AoE fire thing. So you have these circles from the boss. You have the AoE fire thing from Dual Maul if you're fighting that with the boss. And it's like, there's actually so much annoying area denial.
So these circles, whenever I originally saw the changes to Priority of the Sacred Flame, Kess tweeted out this image of this boss, and you look at this image and you're like, this is demonic. Let me just say, these circles are actually nothing. Like they're baited on ranged, and it's kind of obnoxious, especially if somebody is far from the boss and they get Savage Mauled and you're playing a melee DPS. It can be frustrating. But assuming that you're like ranged or stacked and are moving like actual human beings, it's really not that bad.
I'm not sure if it's always on range. You could be right, but
well, it was at least in our group. I mean, we were playing Resto Shaman Mage Moonkin, and it was always on ranged. Now there might be some.
Well, I think sort of the problem, unless you're like moving very, very well, is the boss jumps out, right? Dude. So like the ranged want to be in melee here. Like, see if you can see on screen the way Jack's team is playing, everyone is still stacking in, which it still isn't that big of a deal.
We were stacked in melee. We were like 5 yards out of melee. That way he doesn't leap forever away, and Zorth can still continue to hit both.
Yeah, you need to be close enough that you still have to move around a lot. Okay, it's not a big problem. The only complaint that I have with it is that where does this boss reset? There's no clear area to show where the boss resets, but it does. So
where is it?
Yeah, so it's basically like sort of where the grass is, kind of. So if you end up like getting cornered or not being super strategic with the way that you're moving. But I think this is a boss that feels like it doesn't feel fun, and it feels like an annoying change, especially since so much of the dungeon is hard. Like, come on, give us a break. Like, I get if it's an easy dungeon and you're like trying to beef up some of the bosses that are easy, but like, bro, this dungeon is brutal. Like, we don't need to be adding more mechanics to this dungeon.
I guess a couple of things that they could, like, if they really, really, really want us to go right, Don't change how much damage Emberlyn's is doing whenever she's paired with paired with Dalekar the boss. Instead, it needs to be reduced whenever she's like detached from the boss. That way, you can continue to do it with some of these trash mobs. Do sharpshooters need to get replaced with casters here? I mean, looking at these packs, it's like kind of hard. In theory, you could replace the sharpshooters with like links, maybe.
I think
sharpshooters are just demonic mobs. That's why we don't really play them.
I think at a high level, with the way the mobs are laid out, this will just be a go left
is
angle unless that mini boss is literally impossible. But I do think that if you're playing in like a 12 key and you're not that organized and you're not using comms, it's not the end of the world to just go and just be like, pull one pack at a time and like, oh, we don't have to deal with double caster pulls or whatever. Like, I think it's okay. I think we were all hoping for a little bit more, you know, to like make that area good, but I think they mainly just made it a quality of life increase for like the lower level, less organized groups. But any keys above 12, like I don't think this really changes any of the changes in Priory, other than making the first boss and the left mini boss harder, really did anything.
I think left side would still be better for pretty much everybody involved, because I think that playing dual maul on top of Dalekar isn't, I don't think it's hard. I think it's annoyingly, it requires an annoying level of coordination to be able to maintain kicks like that on the boss. It's not hard, but most people are playing out of voice anyway, so putting a caster mob on top of the boss doesn't really make sense for them. They'd rather have Emberlyn's who just pulses AoE. But I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And then I don't think there's really any changes for the rest of the dungeon.
Yeah, right? Rest of the dungeons, I don't think they change actually anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think Priory can be fun. I just think it's very, very, very challenging. Very, like, so many casters, so many prio mobs, so many, like, range guys that jump and traps and area denial. And I think everyone was hoping for a little bit of leeway here on this dungeon, but we're not getting it.
Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to bring up, how do you feel about Reshii Wraps? So for those who don't know, we covered this like a couple weeks back, but Reshii Wraps are a new artifact item that is available in Season 3. Basically, Blizzard is not making Cloaks drop, which I actually think is a great change. But Reshii Wraps are an artifact item that does various procs depending on your role. So for healers, it gives you like a shield. For tanks, it also gives you a shield. For DPS, it just like does random proc damage. Okay. So for tanks, upon falling below 40% HP, you gain a shield and you reduce damage taken. It's like random stuff like that. How have you been feeling about the Reshii Wraps just as a whole so far?
So I discovered something, and you and everyone else listening is going to be shocked by this. This has never happened before in World of Warcraft. So the damage proc from Reshii Wraps randomly breaks CC. Great, unbelievable, right? Unbelievable that could possibly happen. So we were doing Arakara, and we're doing the first pull. So there's 2 casters in the mini boss. We were struggling, so I decided I'm gonna sheep the far caster. And so we're doing the pull. I press sheep. I sheep the mob. Boom! The mob explodes, not only breaking the sheep, but then pulling everything around it in the explosion, and I have thread on it, so I'm just running for my life. And I'm like, what happened there? And then everyone in the group is me like, oh, your cloak procced. And also apparently there's like it's like an ICD type of thing, right? So what I was doing then going forward was I go to the pull and I'm firing like empty barrages, like a no damage instant cast spell as I'm running towards the pull to get my cloak to proc so that I can sheep the mob and it doesn't break. Yeah, so surely they'll fix that. Surely it won't randomly break CC. I don't know. I find this sort of stuff is not for me. I find it generally like very boring. You just look up what's good for your class or just use your brain. Oh, this stat is good for me. This is what I want. If there are any choices at all. I think it's another weird thing that they're introducing tailoring to this too. More profession stuff, as if profession crafted stuff wasn't already something that I think a lot of people weren't necessarily enjoying in the season. Yeah, I don't know. To me, it feels... when I look at this content, I just feel like it's not for me.
I did notice it.
When they say things like like during the raid testing, for example, there was a boss where there was a portal and you needed to have your cloak on to go through the portal. And it's like, I, I guess that's cool. Like, it doesn't, why would you not have your cloak on in the first place? Like, what are you doing? Is this like that's like the first thing you'll probably do when you log on a character is get your cloak? Yeah, it's like an LFR. Yeah, so this stuff just isn't for me. But again, it comes down to the gearing thing. If it just makes gearing slightly more boring, like it brings problems with breaks stuff. I mean, I hate to be a downer, but it's just so boring.
I'm really interested in hearing what like the comment section has to say about this. But like to me, whenever I've played with these, I think the issue is, I think we're so bloated with procs that this just feels like another proc, right? Like it's just like another thing. I already have 30 sources of damage. What's a 31st gonna do, right? Like there's no difference between 30 versus 31. I scroll on down on the damage meter. Oh, this was 2.1% of my damage. Not bad. Like that's kind of how it feels more or less, where it doesn't make any tangible difference. And whenever you have so much stuff going on, like
very
whatever.
bloaty.
Yeah.
Again, it's one of those things where you put it into classic WoW or even the older sort of talent choices, right? Where you don't have all these random procs and effects. And yeah, you really notice it because it's the only one you have going on, right? But when I'm playing Arcane Mage and I'm just spewing out orbs and splinters and all this stuff's happening and I'm getting procs on my blast and procs on my missiles and procs on my barrage and and there's just so much stuff going on that eventually you just filter it out and you don't care about any of it.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what was my trinket. Like I was looking at procs on my character. I don't know what was my trinket. I don't know what was Reshii Wraps. I don't know what was like random other miscellaneous procs that were on me.
Yeah,
they're all kind of, it's just a bunch of samey kind of stuff.
Yeah, so like that's sort of how I see it, as maybe this legacy of whatever this, I don't even know what the patch is called. That was last patch. Whatever the storyline is, maybe
Koresh.
There's this. Oh yeah, Koresh. Maybe there's some really cool story about it and whatever. And again, I'm not trying to say that's stupid. Like if you play the game for lore and story, that's that's fine. Everyone plays it for different reasons. But I just don't. And then to me, like the gameplay implications of it are so nothing.
All right.
What if the cloak was we're just going to keep coming back to this idea because it was such a banger from you that other time, but what if the cloak is just a second bloodlust? Like everybody gets their own personal bloodlust, right? And it's just like your own bloodlust that you can use independently. Yeah, like dude, that would be banger, right? What if you get a cloak on and it's like the whole season you can just get your own personal bloodlust, whatever you want, alongside the other one.
Oh my god. You want to talk about something that's cool. If I press an on use and it's a personal bloodlust, now that is cool.
Yup.
So Blizzard, if you want to take that proc and add it to DPS specializations, or add it to all, I don't think tanks or healers would be mad about a free bloodlust either. If you want to add it to anybody,
we'll keep repeating it too. We'll just keep copy pasting that idea over everything that's boring. Your renowned track and all this stuff.
Yeah, another bloodlust. Fuck it, why not? All right, moving on.
While players just want one thing and it's disgusting.
It's a lot of haste. So cool stuff we've seen this week. One of the most commonly asked questions I've seen is, I'm coming back to the game. What do I need to do to be able to get prepared for next season? And fortunate enough for you, the answer for this next season is actually not much. So Blizzard has done you a favor and now allows you to be able to do delves and M0s the week that the patch launches. And this is basically before M Plus and Raid opens up. So you'll have some time to be able to catch back up gearing-wise if you took a little bit of a break. In addition to that as well, the only tangible amount of power that you should be looking to get from this patch going into next patch is the Delve Belt, which is pretty easy to get. Their corruption doesn't go to next patch. The Delve Belt, basically all you do is you go and quest through delves, and you're able to get upgrades on the belt. It upgrades all the way up to, what's the cap, 709? Something like that?
I don't know if it's capped out yet.
6 maybe?
It's something
like that, right?
I don't know, whatever.
700
something.
It's less than 710. It's more than 700. It's going to be a piece that it's not going to be BIS for everybody all the next patch, but it's going to be pretty powerful all the way through, let's say, heroic level gearing for most people. And so it is something that you should be looking to get. But beyond that, not really much else. So you don't really have to, there's not a huge grind. There is catch-up mechanisms for those kinds of things as well. Maybe you're gonna. Are there any trinkets that we think that people are gonna need for next patch? Oh, well,
Need no.
you know, so
Need no. Like, I think obviously, like, if you care a lot about early raid prog stuff, like, you know, getting your 12s times so that you can buy those dungeon trinkets, or like getting whatever for, but like, you know, we're not
you wouldn't have
expecting,
quit
yeah, like,
probably.
yeah, like we're not obviously, like, having a mythic Kazan and Jaster diamond is going to be like nice going into next year, right? But that's not really
It's not
realistic for somebody who's,
necessary. It's also not like
no,
it's
and
not
it's
necessarily
not.
in the spirit of the question of like, oh, I'm coming
No,
back.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
One thing I want to add on to in the spirit of the question is, you know, Tettles mentioned there's not that much important stuff you can do. I know you guys don't like to hear it, but I think genuinely the most important thing that you can do is start thinking about like your social network, like whether it's finding some sort of community of people to hang out with, or bugging your buddy who you used to play with. Hey, I'm playing the patch again. Will you come
Come
back? Like,
back.
let's do keys, right? Like,
Yeah.
when, because we talk about all these things and a lot of it comes down to like getting into groups, right? But if you have a buddy who plays tank, or, you know, a buddy who heals or anything like that, it makes things a lot easier to just like go and do dungeons. It makes it a lot more easy to get through. And at the same time, like, I don't know, like maybe find some guild. Like, you know, you might not think that you want a guild right now, but maybe just joining some guild that'll help you get a couple heroic boss kills on the first week, so that way you don't have to suffer through random pugs of not knowing. Like, pugs on the first week can be really brutal, especially if you're coming back and you don't have the, you know, oh, last season I was this IO and,
Mhm.
you know, these mythic bosses or whatever. Like, you're limited into what groups you can get in.
One night a week AOTC guilds, I think, are viable for that kind of thing, and it also helps you socialize, right? It helps you meet new people that you otherwise wouldn't have necessarily met.
Oh yeah, and you don't have to make some, you know, patch long commitment. You can just hang out with a guild, and then as soon as you know, get to AOTC or whatever, you just like
Yeah.
bounce, and who knows, you might like it. I know it's scary, but
What's the deal with phase diving? I knew that's a next patch thing, but like, to be honest, I know nothing about it.
So I glanced at it really briefly, and my impression of it was like just some random open world event thing that no one will ever do unless
Oh,
you're like farming the mogs or whatever. That's kind of what it looked. I could be totally wrong, but that's what it looked like to
okay.
me. Yeah,
All right.
like whatever the stuff people do in Undermine or whatever.
You have anything for this week?
How long's the Diablo event running? Oh yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about it last podcast, but there's like, if you're bored right now or you're like, you know, whatever, there's actually a lot of like potential mog and mount farming stuff you can do. So don't forget, this is the mount farming month or whatever, where the drop rates are massively increased. If you're somebody who like kind of is maybe interested but you don't know where to get started, if you actually just search like mount farming guide wowhead on Google, there's actually like a pretty interesting article that gives you a list of all of the daily lockout mounts, the weekly lockout mounts, the ones you can repeatedly farm. You can like click on the link and be like, oh, I don't know what Mogushan Vaults is. Where is that? And you can click on it and see. And, you know, it just sort of helps you get started. I remember when I was a noob and I was like, I kind of wanted to get into it, but I was very intimidated by like, oh yeah, you know, it's just in this raid and this, and I had no idea what any of the bosses were, or even how to navigate to like old expansions or old Dalaran and new Dalaran, and like just having a guide with a bunch of links and like maps and shit was like very handy. So I mean, I was temporarily a mini mount farmer. I got some of it done, and it's something that, you know, if you're just like bored, you know, whatever, and you just want to like log in and kill a couple bosses, you can look up like what mounts to get or whatever. So also there's the treasure goblin event. I don't know how long that's running, but basically to do that, you just go to Undermine, and when they just like randomly spawn throughout the map, it creates these portals, and then you just basically like kill this loot pinata thing. You get these crystals, and then there's a merchant in town where you can buy like full tier sets. So like if you're just like a druid guy and you love druid, like you can literally spend like 15 to 30 minutes farming these crystals, buy the druid tier set, and then you're just done and you don't need to worry about it. But overall, there's actually like a lot of stuff to do if you're into that.
Yeah, but the official position of the bench is that the mount event is actually lowering the prestige of the mounts, and if you farm the mounts during the event, it actually makes the mounts worth less.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, think about, you just don't know what it's like. You know, you don't know what it's like to have been there and gotten that mount when it was a hard drop rate. Like, you just got the easy mode. You know?
Exactly.
It's like if this is like the LFR of mount farming. Like, it's just completely ruining the game.
Let's move on to some Q&A. First question we have from Two Broke. He says, do you think the talent trees and hero talents are healthy for the game? I personally think they were both a mistake because Blizzard takes most of the time to balance the specs, so they actually don't have time to balance talent trees. This leads to very problematic gameplay. Havoc doesn't use Blade Dance on current PTR. Jesus. Brewmaster has talent builds without Breath of Fire. Ellie has builds without Lava Burst in the past. These are core abilities and ruin the spec if they're not part of it. Okay, so what I will say, Havoc not using Blade Dance, Brewmaster having builds without Breath of Fire, I don't think that that's an issue of the talent trees specifically, that you're allowed the talent out of those. I think that's probably an issue of Blizzard not noticing that those abilities aren't going to get used in changing the reasons that they're not getting used far enough in advance. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's definitely, while that's true, it's a balance issue. It does sort of create a problem of like basically the way the hero talents are, and then now the tier sets on the hero talents, you're doubling and tripling down on certain abilities or certain mechanics.
Yeah.
And while that can feel good, what it also happens is it pulls away some other abilities, right? Like for example, as mage, the tier set and the hero talents are basically like really, really buffing your damage of barrage to the point where barrage is like 50% of your damage or sometimes even more in a key. And it's like, you know, while that's cool, it also does like, okay, well now all of my other abilities just feel like, how do I barrage more? How do I get more barrage procs? Like, and some specs, it can feel kind of bad, right? It's like, well, if you're a demon hunter, to be honest, I don't know anything about the demon hunter, but it's like, you know, if you're a demon hunter, now your immolation aura does like basically 0 fucking damage, but like that's kind of a very iconic, cool demon hunter ability, and now he's just like some little fodder thing that you don't even care about. And it's like,
in the past, you know, like in current iterations, you know, sometimes you would actually talent out of these abilities, but in the past, if this happened, is that really that much different than you just not pressing it, right? There have been iterations of Balance Rude where you've only spammed Moonfire, for example, and Blizzard ends up nerfing them because that wasn't intended. But that doesn't mean that has nothing to do with anything else, right? Like that could have happened with the old talent system is more my point. I don't know if it's just a byproduct of this new talent system, the fact that you would talent out of these things.
I think I don't necessarily mind. Like that's a kind of like what you mentioned, a constant struggle that Blizzard has of they're trying to like buff abilities and make cool gameplay options, but ultimately that's also gonna push people away from other abilities and make other abilities less relevant.
Sure.
So it's kind of a constant back and forth that they're going through that I think hero talents also do, but you know, so does everything else in the game. My biggest problem with hero talents is I think there's a little bit too much bloat in them. Like already there's so many talents that you have in little different things. I feel like they really wanted this idea that when you are leveling up in the War Within, every single level you got a point. But like if you think about, I feel like it should have been a lot smaller. Like hero talents should basically only have like, you know, maybe 2 to 3 nodes, I think,
Sure.
going forward, and just like, you know, make them impactful and you care about them, but also like, you know, you shouldn't have to worry. Like there's so many little things like, oh, this reduced, like for instance, priest having double grip, right? Like have you ever been in a situation where your priest doesn't have double grip and it's just like buried in your hero talent and some random hero talent, and it's like, why? It just like, why does that even need to be there? Like I guess it's kind of cool, but it just adds so much. And then especially when you add in like the weird defensive stuff, like I know Druid has one that's like, oh, when you regrowth yourself, it gives you 6% DR or whatever. And it's like all this stuff, it's just so much that I just don't think that all needs to be there.
I think that we were all on the same page whenever we saw hero talents, and every single hero talent has a utility node and a defensive node on it. We were like, okay, hold on, you gotta relax. But it's also, you know, you called out some of the utility and the defensive stuff, but it's also just like modifiers on abilities. Like I pulled up Spellslinger Arcane Mage here, and I typed in Arcane Barrage, and there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
the whole
9,
spec.
10,
Right.
11, 12, 13 nodes that interact with Barrage. Like the Barrage does more damage, Barrage does more damage, Barrage does more damage, Barrage does more damage under these conditions. Oh, it's 2 charges of Barrage. Okay, great. Right. Like, I don't know. and then
It's just too much, right? Like it doesn't. You don't need like I fully understand. Maybe I don't, right? But I'm assuming that their mindset was they want the leveling experience to feel like while you're leveling, you're slowly learning about your character and
yeah.
getting more powerful with each level. Like that was one of the major complaints about the old talent system was there might be only a talent every 15 levels or whatever, and then it's like you feel like you got 10 levels and your character didn't even change. But I mean, leveling is just in my opinion, such a small part of WoW nowadays that it shouldn't impact the game that much, or just like, have less nodes, but then get more points in them where you can just like keep, I don't know. I just think in general, I don't mind the talent trees. I just think there's way too much stuff going
Yeah.
on. And I actually don't even mind the old system of like, okay, there's 3 choices and you just pick the choice on the row. Like, I think that actually plays a lot more reasonably end game because you sort of just like, you have your options, you can pick. It's not like, oh, I really need to get dispel in this key, but now it breaks everything and I need to figure it out. I mean, I guess some theory crafters like that, but just a bit much.
Yeah, I think that for theory crafting, it's actually kind of interesting. But like if you're just looking at a guide and trying to figure out like what's going on, I think it can definitely become a little bit more daunting. As for the question of like healthy for the game, I think there are actually some aspects where you could argue that it is more healthy for the game. Now, just let me cook for a second. In the past, there were a lot of specializations that had weird target capping, or whenever they selected their build for Mythic Plus, it basically fully tanked their single target for one reason or another. And now with the current talent builds, that's a lot less true because you're able to get a more balanced damage profile out of what the current talents give you. Now, haters would say that you should have been able to do that with the old talent system, but you weren't. You realistically just weren't. But I do think that they've created kind of healthier spec balance, at least for between Mythic Plus and Raid, because in the past there were Mythic Plus specs and there were Raid specs, and it was very rare that a specialization was both. Just because the damage profile that is required for Mythic Plus was vastly, vastly different than the damage profile that is required for Raid. But yeah,
I think
I tend to agree that I struggle to see. Okay, so like, would I rather keep these current ones or would I rather go back to the old system? I think I would rather keep these now than watch Blizzard struggle to kind of integrate us back into the old system. But I think that there are a lot of problems with the current system of talents that I would love to see try to get, at least taper back or addressed in some capacity, particularly those related to bloat on specific abilities, how individual procs interact with our kits. I think utility and defensive bloat are also some things that I think are incredibly problematic currently.
Yeah, I think another thing to add on to that, there's this duality of, well, hero talents allow you more variety in your own spec. One thing that's really cool, so for example, with Discipline Priest, Void Weaver versus Oracle are two wildly different gameplay styles.
Sure.
They're wildly different aesthetically. And if you're somebody who really likes Disc Priest, I feel like the fact that you can choose between them is really cool. And you're noticing a lot of people on PTR play Void Weaver. And I don't even necessarily think that's because it's better or whatever. I mean, maybe it will turn out to be, but I think it's genuinely because you've been playing Oracle all season and now like, hey, let me try this out. This might be fun. Like maybe this is good. That's one side of it, right? So if you like the variety, that's cool. On the other hand, when you talk about balance, right, it can also feel bad when the one that you want to play sucks, right? Like they can't make all of them good all of the time. So if you are really in love with Void Weaver Disc Priest and it just everyone's playing Oracle and Void Weaver kind of sucks, it feels bad, right? Like, imagine you really like Havoc Demon Hunter, right? And then they add a new Demon Hunter spec, which is going to happen, right? And then that Demon Hunter spec is completely OP. Like now you almost feel like an idiot for playing Havoc, right? Like why you can just switch specs, dude. Why aren't you playing Void Demon Hunter? And so I think that there's sort of that situation of like, it gives you variety, but yeah, the balance does kind of get out of whack. Personally, I don't subscribe to that like feeling as much. Like I'm just like, well, okay, I'm just gonna play a different spec or play what's better or enjoy what's worse, right? But
I mean, we're
definitely
like that,
some
right?
people
Like,
are, yeah. But I think when it comes to the WoW community, you sort of want to have your cake and eat it too. Of like, you want to play the spec that you want to play, but you also want it to be, balanced well and super good, and be able to top the meets or whatever.
This is why on this week's episode of The Bench, I will commend Blizzard for great balancing of this season. Continue.
This season own. We're harping on it. Again, right? You know, you can talk about, oh, it's really hard to balance specs, but they came out with this ridiculous talent tree last expansion. Then they added these ridiculous hero talents, and we have one of the most balanced seasons. Okay, you know, not every spec is playable. Shaman, for example, is not 99% totemic as a resto, but hey, you know, it's still, I don't know, maybe when you give every spec so many options, like eventually someone comes up with something good, you know?
I'd rather my hero talent be unplayable than my spec be unplayable personally.
True, exactly, right? It gives you two options to play your spec, right? Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Last question from Q&A. Again, if you want to submit your Q&A as well, you can tweet at @thebenchwow on Twitter. Alternatively, you can DM me. I might forget. Like, I'm gonna be honest. You're better off if you DM the bench.
Definitely tweet them at Tettles. If you DM them to me, I read every DM that I get, but you have no idea where it's going after I read it.
It gets sunk whenever you DM me too. It's really a lot better if you tweet it at the Twitter. I'm telling you. Okay. Last question. I think it would be funny for you guys to predict the meta comp for Mythic Plus and then come back to it in 3 months and see who got more specializations right. Tiermaker.com. All right, let me reset this.
No, you just have to predict the meta comp.
No, hold on. It's time.
Oh, I guess right there.
Yeah, all right, what are we...
I'm ready to go first. Ready?
All right, I'm ready.
Protection Warrior.
Okay.
Marksmanship Hunter. Enhancement Shaman. Shadow Priest.
Okay.
Resto Druid.
Interesting.
I think there's a more boring answer that's just like Shadow Priest, Arcane Mage, Boomkin, or whatever. But I'm gonna go with this one. I like this one.
I think
this has absolutely nothing to do with. These are all of the specs that beat Jangby in damage, including the Warrior.
A lot of bullshit specs. I think I'm on Warrior. I think I'm on Moonkin. I think I'm on Beast Mastery Hunter. This might sound insane. I think a BM is actually better than an MM right now. Enhance is absolutely fucking nuts. The problem is I don't know what's best for the healers right now.
Bro, what healer's gonna keep that team alive? That sounds like a nightmare. I just imagine like some hunter dying. I got Dorky's Boomkin. Like, bro.
They need God. It's Disc Priest again.
Disc Priest. I mean, I don't know what healer other than Oracle Disc could genuinely like keep this team alive against one shots, right?
I actually don't know what healer is good right now. Like, I've seen a lot of the DPS specializations are kind of crazy because there's I would say a lot, but there's probably 8 DPS specs that are nuts. I haven't played with the healer spec that I'm like, wow, this is the greatest thing I've ever played with. All of the healers.
Yeah, there's so much damage in the dungeons that
I think take a lot of damage.
I think Prez puts out an absolute ton of healing, but it just Prez, right? Like nobody wants to play with Prez. I think that it could work, especially if you needed the Bloodlust. I think Shaman has such a nice kit in terms of 2 AoE stops and a 12-second kick and pretty good AoE heals. Its tier set is really, really strong for burst AoE heal. Its tier set doesn't work on the boat and Dawnbreaker, but in every other situation, it's very good.
They can't do damage in Dawnbreaker either.
No, they fixed that, ironically. They fixed Acid Rain on the Dawnbreaker boat, but its tier set doesn't work on the boat.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think Mistweaver has a problem where it doesn't. It's okay. I don't know. It's okay. Like, I think if you need what it brings, then it's good. But otherwise, I don't know. I think Mistweaver's okay. I mean, it's like pretty good all around. I think like the problem is it just doesn't do anything that the other classes do as well. You know,
I heard good things about Mistweaver. I've actually, strangely enough, I actually heard that Holy Priest wasn't that bad. Have you seen it at all?
Holy Priest has some really, really good tier sets and like hero talent interactions, and also they receive some buffs. The only thing I worry about Holy Priest is like, so look at either of the comps that we put together. Like, how do you stay alive and keep your team alive as a Holy Priest? But like, healing wise, they're like putting out tons of Prayer of Mendings now, and then you're getting procs off of it. Your tier set, I think, makes Prayer of Mending into like a big heal, like basically as big as like your big single target heals, and that's a very short cooldown, and it has a proc to reset.
This comp
Holy,
has no
I actually think Holy Priest will be pretty strong in raid. There's actually a lot of really good like not normal raid healers like Prez or Holy Priest or Mistweaver that could end up showing up in the Race to World first. We might see some differing, like each guild decides to prep different ones.
Dude, this comp has actually no group utility. I don't know if this is playable.
Yeah, oh yeah. When your first two picks were Boom Kid and then BM Hunter, I'm just thinking like,
it just
oh
does
no,
so much fucking damage. Is the
yeah,
thing.
like I think, in my opinion, I think you just have to swap one of those for Mage just because you need a class.
I think you
lives.
have to swap with. I think it has to be the Shaman spec. These two specs I think are like the top DPS right now.
Yeah, then you just need another class that lives then.
Yeah. There's a question as to whether or not it's supposed to be BM out Shadow Priest Enter again, And then
are people sick of DK? I'm seeing no DKs on PTR.
I think they capped Festering Wounds for Unholy, which
oh yeah, that's right. I remember people were very upset about Unholy. I actually did a couple keys with Walpin is his name. He was playing Frost. He seemed to be doing okay.
That guy's a beast. That guy is very, very, very good. So I don't know what DK looks like, but that guy, if DK is good, I'm sure he'll play.
Yeah, if Frost is good, that guy is. He's like, I remember him playing Frost in some season where like nobody was doing it. He was doing like huge damage.
Yeah, hold on, pulled up his stream.
He's just out on the streets.
I mean, this is how you kind of like look. You kind of just like click through some of the best players and see roughly how they're performing. He's getting beat by Moonkin. Most people get beat by Moonkin. It's not the end of the world. It's not that bad.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny that you mentioned that, like click through people's streams and see how they're doing. I feel like when it comes to healer, I consider myself like a pretty good healer and pretty knowledgeable, but any one healer, I can instantly name 3 people that's better at me than that healer and smarter than me at that healer,
Yeah.
So I feel like when it comes to PTR, we were talking about that earlier about the whole like prepping or theory crafting or whatever. It feels a little futile to me because like no matter what healer ends up being good, like there's gonna be someone that I have to like look at and look forward to and be like, this guy is gonna cook and come up with way better builds. Like if disc is good, yeah, I mean I think I play a good disc, but like there's AJ and there's mode and there's all these other crazy longtime priest players that are gonna like sift through the information and decide on a good build like way faster than me.
Yeah, I think that like there's no reason for you to need to like play every single specialization. The best thing that you can do is like try to utilize other people being absolute no life sweats and utilize the testing that they've already done to try to help you accelerate your own individual knowledge
and get used to the dungeons too, right? Like that's sort of what I'm doing is that's kind of why I was yapping so much about all the dungeons, because I've actually spent more time on PTR than I usually do, and that's all I'm literally doing is just like thinking about the dungeons and the mechanics and how the mobs work. Because I'm not even like my mage, I'm literally using just the same gear with the Reshii Wraps on. Like I didn't even get any of the new trinkets or anything because like who cares? Like what am I gonna do? Am I gonna innovate the best mage trinkets for next season? Like what's even the point of me equipping those?
The things that actually allow me to learn the fastest is like whenever we get into voice with like people in our inner circle, right? Whenever we get into voice and somebody will like call out something that they've noticed about specific mobs, and it's like, oh, that's how that works. Okay, interesting. Or it's like, they'll just like say something. I'm like, oh, that clicks. That's how that mob works. Or this is the reason that you're doing this thing. Okay, that makes more sense. And so then it's kind of this foundational knowledge that's like built off of what other people have also noticed about the dungeons.
That's one thing that I remember about Dragonflight beta was Shadowlands. Like I knew some people, but I wasn't quite as connected. But by the time Dragonflight had come around, like I knew most people, even across like EU or whatever. And it's like getting to play with people like Gingy or Now or Andy Brew or and just like watching the stuff that they do and like the stuff that they try and the way that it's like these guys they really cook. Like when it comes to thinking about mobs and mob mechanics and like how to counter things and all that, and like what to pull with what to, like they come up with that so fast, and their brains are just very, very M+ minded.
Yeah, to me it's like Dragon Evade. I get in voice with them.
And I'm just like,
This is genius. You're right.
Yeah. Dude, speaking of Greg, first of all, those two guys are brilliant. But have you played with Greg on PTR yet, or any enhanced shaman?
I played with Greg's warrior today and Zorthus on enhancement shaman.
So apparently I don't know that much about the enhancement shaman tier set, but apparently you like get these procs and it does like giga damage, and you want to line them up with your cooldowns.
You get ascendance procs, yeah.
But but if you get the procs at the end of the pull, you don't want to send them. You can't attack because you want to hold on to this proc for the next pull. So when we're playing with Greg, he'll literally like just stop attacking the pack, and he just turns into Ghost Wolf and just starts running to the next pack and just waiting next to it. And we're just like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, I can't attack. Like, I can't do anything. I cannot even play my character. It is the optimal thing for me to do, to run to the next pull and wait for you guys. Like, this is the worst shit I've ever seen.
That is demonic.
And on top of that, there's a new tank Kazan too. I don't remember what the trinket is called.
There's a tank Kazan?
Yeah, there's like some stacking thing. It's literally works the exact same way, where like if you get out of combat, you lose stacks. And so tanks are going to be playing that, and they're just going to be running around like maniacs again for another season.
I'm going to be honest. I'm glad that it's the tanks that have to play it.
Yes. Yes, I agree. It's way more demonic when it's a DPS.
It appropriately motivates the tank to actually want to do it. Whenever like two of your DPS want it, your tank is like, I don't fucking care about them. Whenever it's the tank, he's like, no, that's mine. You know that he's appropriately motivated to get the next pull started.
It's great as a DPS. Jangbi loves Kazan tank, but from a healer perspective, having a Kazan tank is demonic.
Dude, Kazan as a healer is just like, you're stuck in combat for 7 fucking minutes.
Yeah. Dude, the worst part is, I remember one time I was in combat for 8.5 minutes as a healer, and then somehow we lose combat for 5 seconds. Everyone's like, oh, that sucks. I'm like, bro, can I drink? Like, why are we so angry?
Do you remember the first area of Motherload in BFA? How people did all that shit in one long chain. People would be in combat for quite literally 8.5 minutes.
Underrot too. Underrot, like the second boss area, especially. Yeah. I do specifically remember another 8-minute combat moment where I ran out of mana. That was an evade and dorky key where they're just holding W the whole way.
You're just like, what am I supposed to do about mana? They're just like, I don't know, figure it out.
Yeah, can you just press hibernate? It doesn't cost that much mana.
You just press it again. All right. I think that's going to do it for us this week. We will be back next week talking about what? I don't know. We'll figure it out. Maybe we'll have a guest. You never really know. We'll see.
Oh, we got the new dungeons.
We do have the new dungeons, right? We got the Tazaveshes that are going to be returning. So at least at minimum, we'll be talking about that. Yeah. So that's it. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Adios.